Very good morning to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. It is the 10th of January 2022. I trust that you had a wonderful weekend. My name is Miriam Ogotu. The show is Kenyan Africa at Large. And of course, at the show, we get through the headlines on the newspapers across Kenya and some across Africa. And then later on, I'll bring in my panelists. I'll just start with Kenya. And the main headline on the Star newspaper this morning: why Mudavadi is under siege, his ANC troops bitterly split, Western Tough is under assault by Raila and Ruto. You'll find that on page 4 and 5 on the Star newspaper. Ruto team under fire over Linturi comment on Madoadoa. That is a story that has continued to gather some storm there. And I see my mom in you. Raila tells mothers of political prisoners. That is on page 2. And Kenya could be past 5th COVID-19 wave. You'll find that on page 9 on the Star newspaper. And man rescued after 3 days inside collapsed mine. That is on page 2. So that is what we have on the front page of the Star newspaper. We turn our attention now to the Daily Nation. The main headline on the Daily Nation: Ruto 6 gambles in vote race, eyes on State House with the August 9th general election fast approaching. Deputy President William Ruto has made 6 huge make or break gambles in his journey to succeed his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta, that analysts warn could be his political Waterloo. And the story is on page 7. Grade 4, 5 pupils set to sit national exams. That is on page 8. Anxiety mounts among Uhuru's Mount Kenya loyalists, and leaders are unsettled over his perceived slow speed in providing a precise succession plan ahead of the August 9th polls. You'll find that on page 4. Police detained Linturi in hate speech. That is on page 6. And miners 96-hour ordeal in caved mine. That is on page 9. And Africa Cup of Nations kicks off, and host Cameroon CEO of Burkina Faso as top continental tournament gets underway. We know the AFCON started yesterday there in Cameroon. The story is on page 42 and 43 on the sports section on the Daily Nation. And then we head over to the Standard newspaper. The main headline: Linturi's loose tongue ignites political storm. Ruto ally questioned over controversial comment at Eldoret rally as Raila and governors criticized legislator over slur. That is on page 6 and 7. And the former KEMSA boss blamed over scandal. Investigation into how drug agency lost 8 billion Kenya shillings to COVID billionaires finds Manjari, who was CEO at the time, had broken procurement rules. That is on page 5. Raila pledges to support mothers of ex-prisoners. And ODM leader says he will compensate women whose children were tortured or jailed for their political views and activism in the second liberation quest. That is on page 4. On the Standard newspaper, and just up the Cup of Nations, which star will shine brightest, that is on page 38 and 39. Of course, the main pictorial there is the arrest of Meru Senator Mithika Linturi. So that is what we have in a nutshell on the 3 leading newspapers here in the country. Let me see if I can get some from across the continent this morning. And we do have one from Uganda, and the main headline on New Vision, one of the Uganda's leading newspapers: private agencies give schools a 2.7 trillion Uganda shillings bailout, and retired cops money missing. Government offers Acon land on Lake Victoria's shores, and speak divorces African wives. All right, I'm sure the people from Uganda, you know what that story is all about. So that is the New Vision. And then we go to the Daily Monitor, still, I think, a Uganda newspaper. Inside the new curriculum as schools reopen today. And the students across the country return to school after 2 years interrupted by COVID-19 pandemic. By the way, students in Uganda have never gone back to school, so they will be resuming their studies after 2 years today. And so that is that. Northern bypass 13 years of crime and counting, and how schools force taxi park opening. So, and of course, there's an update there of the current figures of COVID-19 in Uganda, and the new cases that have been reported for the past 24 hours. hours in Uganda is around 984,000. And of course, the accumulated data from Uganda now have topped 153,762. Not too bad. I think Uganda really tried to contain this COVID-19. And then we go to the Citizen. This is a newspaper from Tanzania, and I think it's a sister newspaper of the Daily Nation here in the country, where investors reaped big in 2021. Local companies played a big role in the DSC's sterling performance last year, signaling a better outlook this year. You'll find that on page 3. Raised to succeed in Uganda space. Remember, the Speaker of the National Assembly of Tanzanian Parliament resigned last week after a disagreement with President Suluhu over, I think, dallying with getting some, some donor funding from outside the country. He was a key ally of former president, which we know some of the stance Magufuli had when it comes to getting money from outside. I think the speaker did not agree with President Suluhu, so him and news. I think this is from Zimbabwe, why analysts remain bullish and appointees urged to honor president's trust. You'll find that in Tanzania, I think, not in Zimbabwe. The one in Zimbabwe is the news. Southern Eye. We are sorry, and that is according to Zimbabwean Electoral Commission. Yesterday admitted that it had deprived thousands of prospective voters in opportunity to participate in the upcoming elections. So you'll find that they are in Zimbabwe, and the Daily News is still in Zimbabwe. No letting up in ZANU-PF's war as kills feast fight, a new Midlands meeting. Zimbabwe is gearing up for its elections, and so there has been some kills. I think from last week we looked at it sometimes back, so that continues. And the Chronicle woman leaves lad from dairy farming, and that is a newspaper still from the southern part of Africa. And then the Punch from Nigeria enforced compulsory vaccination for local government, state workers, and federal government tells governors, and you'll find that. And of course, Akeredolu vows to end herdsmen attack in Ondo. We've seen how that has played out. The disagreements between herdsmen and farmers, especially in northern Nigeria, who come to the other parts of Nigeria, that has caused a lot of conflict there. And that continues. And we've seen the deaths that happened in Zamfara state over the weekend, where over 200 people were killed. And so insecurity in Nigeria continues. The Guardian still from Nigeria. Federal government's August plan fails to fly ahead of subsidy removal. And Tinubu informs Buhari of Zimbabwe of 2023 presidential ambition. Nigeria is going for its election next year. Of course, Buhari is serving his second and last term. Nigeria has a term of 4 years. So Buhari will be done with his 8 years soon, and he will be leaving. And that continues. So in a nutshell, that is just a few of what we have across the continent of Africa this morning. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. At this point, I'm joined by Daniel Wasonga, in-house analyst, and also our correspondent. Daniel Wasonga, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for finding time to be with us today.
Yes, very, very good morning, Miriam Mogutu at our headquarters in Nairobi. Good morning to our viewers here in Nairobi, Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the globe who are watching us this morning. It is indeed my pleasure to be on the panel this particular morning in Nairobi.
All right, nice to have you. And we also do have Sharon Gitonga from Nairobi. Sharon Gitonga, very good morning to you.
A very good morning to you, Miriam, my colleague panelist Daniel Wasonga, and to all our viewers who are watching us in Kenya, Africa, and the globe. Good morning.
Very well. Okay, so let's just start with this story that has refused to go away, and I don't think it will be going away anytime soon. The sentiments that Meru Senator Mithika Linturi made over the weekend at that Eldoret rally, and Linturi's loose tongue ignites political storm. That is the main headline on the Standard newspaper. Ruto ally questioned over controversial comment at Eldoret rally. Israel and governors criticized legislator over slander. I think yesterday he came out and he tried to explain what he really meant, and he's saying that was taken out of context. Are we reading too much into this? Is this an overreaction, Daniel?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And I will hold on to my opinion yesterday during the Africa Showdown, where I say that this term madoadoa in the Kenyan context, which means patches, it means that we have people who do not really fit into a particular society or maybe a group of individuals. And when you come to understand the term madoadoa in the Kenyan political arena, then it has a historical background, and the figurative meaning of the word madoadoa has always meant the few individuals, or maybe few minority tribes who are in the Rift Valley region of the country, who maybe perhaps in one way or another do not walk the same political path as the natives of that particular region. And in our history, and especially the electoral history, as Dr. Masanga wrote, it has always been used to orchestrate attacks on these people who are non-locals. And therefore, when you use this particular term, it actually rings a bell into the minds of people who have been the victims of these tribal siege, and who have suffered the use of the term madoadoa every electoral period since 1992. You remember in 1992 general election, we had violence. In 1997, we had electoral violence. And in 2007, 2008, actually, it was the epitome of this violence. And the term that has always been used has been madoadoa. And when you go even to the ICC case files, you realize that the term was actually used to refer to those people who came from the central part of the country, or maybe those who came from the Kisii region and all that. So therefore, these are divisive term, in as much as someone will say that we have to understand the concept. It does not matter, Miriam. This is an electoral year. Eldoret has been always the epitome of electoral violence. And also, for those maybe who might be saying that perhaps Linturi meant something else when he said madoadoa, they should go back and look at the clip where Kericho Senator Aaron Cheriot is saying that Indians should be deported back to Punjab. They should not be allowed to control Eldoret. So these utterances which are made in the same context with the madoadoa, and all these leaders advocating for people to be deported. And that is a crime against humanity when you go to the international criminal law. So to me, I think the intention actually meant what majority of Kenyans got it. And actually that is why the entire nation is furious about this. They meant what they meant, and being an electioneering period, and being that they're in Eldoret, where this has happened before, then there's no way Linturi can be able to exonerate himself. I submit, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. And I think Linturi has since, apologized, and I'll read just in a few, but let's just see how, the Standard newspaper has covered that story on page 6. And Meru Senator Mithika Linturi's controversial madoadoa remarks during Deputy President William Ruto's rally in Eldoret have sparked a political firestorm, attracting mixed reactions from politicians. Ruto's allies described Linturi's remarks as a figurative language aimed at urging Uasin voters to embrace ASIC's peace voting pattern. However, pro-government leaders termed the senator's utterances as ethnic profiling and a threat to peaceful coexistence of communities in the Rift Valley. And yesterday, ODM leader Raila Odinga criticized Linturi, saying all Kenyans have a right to be in any part of the country without being blackmailed into backing certain political formations. And Raila said state agencies will not entertain reckless remarks by politicians ahead of next year's elections. And as much as I sort of understand what Linturi was trying to say, but as we know, Eldoret is a bit cosmopolitan, as much as we do have a majority of the population who are the locals, but also we know that it is a very cosmopolitan place, and perhaps such sentiments might not sit well, with the rest of the residents who are not from that locality. Sharon Gitonga, is it an overreaction, or are we taking Linturi out of a context, as you said now, that perhaps is being misquoted?
Miriam, thank you very much for for that question, and I'm reminded of some words that were drawn by Chinua Achebe, where he actually said, "Let the hawk perch and let the eagle perch, and if anyone tells the other not to perch, may his wings actually break." And by these words, he actually meant and talked about the importance that comes with living in peace and, coexistence, basically. And if someone actually refuses to go on the way of peace, then, it is not going to be well for him. And that is what, democracy is all about. And, we have talked here consistently about the need for politics of tolerance, decency, politics of value creation, and not politics of value destruction. And, I've also seen the UDA sycophants talking about, trying to sanitize the remarks that were given by the senator of Meru County, that is Mithika Linturi, and, by remarking them to be out of context. And, our memories are still very fresh, of what happened actually, last week in Parliament. And, even the remarks actually coming from Rift Valley, which you've outrightly put it, being a cosmopolitan county, waters down the events that happened, during the post-election violence. To talk about the Kiambaa Church, the destruction of lives, and the destruction of properties, and even the lives that were lost. I can tell you, I've been involved in planning and organizing of corporate events and public relations. And one thing, there's always something that we call a debrief, whereby all the speakers have to be, before you actually lined up for such a big mega rally to launch the deputy president bid, there needed to be a debrief because at this point, if you are trying to protect the image and the brand of the deputy president, what you actually needed to, talk about, the kind of the manner of in which that all the speakers were meant to speak. So it is either the communication failed or it was maybe a very well orchestrated plan. And I love the fact that the likes of different stakeholders from the NCIC and even the Inspector General have been quite swift to take an action. And I believe he's actually being arraigned in court as we speak, and law is going to take, presidents, and not just by freeing him on bail, but perhaps even revoking his plans to vie for any seat, because such a leader is not fit to serve in any office. Probably should serve as a lesson to other leaders that we've had before, and not just even in the UDA, even in other political parties. We've had them come out clearly and, utter not so interesting words that are likely to cause a division. And also for the deputy president, I think if he was quite wise, he ought to have taken up the responsibility being a leader, but seems these kind of efforts have been fertile. He's the one that provided this kind of platform, and his silence is most likely to lower his, so much conglomerations politically, because, we say politics are emotive. So, and with the kind of high octane and stakes of, politics, every move counts. So I've seen him is already in Bomet, and the least I think he would have done is to apologize to Kenya so that he can actually, protect his affiliation, and also to the fact that, Senator Mithika is actually associated with his political party. So for me, I don't think anything is actually being drawn out of context, but everyone can tell that maybe what Mithika actually said could actually be a representation of who the deputy president is and the UDA sycophants at large. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Wesonga, a very interesting perspective there, that reminder that Sharon has brought into attention. I did not hear in that rally that Ruto, after whatever Linturi said, came out and corrected that. And since then, he's not really spoken about this matter. So this silence from the deputy president, How can we translate it?
Thank you so much. And of course, the silence in the midst of all these insightful statements by Senator Linturi from William Ruto actually means that he approves of that particular sentiments. And that actually is something that has history has taught us that William Ruto himself believes in these politics of exclusion. We have seen a tape record of him earlier on in his heydays, talking about these people, these strangers who were brought into the Rift Valley and who were supposed to move out because the land there belongs to the Kalenjins and all that, even in Trans Nzoia and all that. But William Ruto has to be reminded that this country, everyone has a right to live anywhere they wish to. Like, for example, in my home county of Busia, in my village, we have Kikuyus who have lived there since the 1960s and 70s, and no one has a problem with them. So when they talk about Madoadoa, they have to realize that Kenya, by its social strata, it is actually a Madoadoa country where Kambas, Kikuyus, Luos, Luyas, Borana, Rendile can live in a certain cosmopolitan town and peacefully coexist, own businesses, and be able to worship whichever way they want, be able to support political ideas that they so wish to support, and no one will come and force them to be evicted out of those geographical localities. So to me, I think the deputy president believes in bigotry, and that is why he cannot condemn such particular sentiments. You remember in 2007, 2008, at the height of the post-election violence, instead of protecting the people who lived in his constituency as a leader, he rushed to take Adrian Muteshi's 100-acre farm, and that is something that has been on our screens that the case was in the court. So Miriam, you cannot make me believe that someone who took Muteshi's farm at the height of this violence in 2007-2008 will come out and condemn Linturi's remarks. If anything, maybe perhaps this is an individual who is waiting for the likes of Mishra, for the likes of Buzeki, and many other leaders who have been earmarked as Madoadoa to be evicted out of Rift Valley so that he can grab their land. This is a man who has a very high appetite for assets and lands that he has not worked hard for. You remember during his eulogy for former President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, he said that he bought his first car through a piece of land who, together with his accomplices, had noticed in Eldoret that he did not have an owner. You know, that is a kind of language conmen have. And, you know, owing to the fact that people who have been already called Madoadoa in Rift Valley own this property, then I believe it is in his top interest that these people are evicted so that he can be able to own this land. So to sum it up, Miriam, William Ruto will be the last person to actually maybe come out and strongly condemn whatever sentiments the Meru senator actually put out there in Eldoret. I submit.
All right, and before we move on from this story, let me just read an apology from the Meru senator. And in a statement to newsrooms, Linturi apologized for his remarks, saying he was carried away by the moment as he drummed up support for a 6-piece vote for UDA candidates. It is true that words like Madoadoa, whilst otherwise innocent and legitimate expressions have in certain contexts come to be understood as representing inflammatory intent. I regretfully concede that my choice of words was unfortunate and apologize unreservedly. I think that is important that he came out and apologized. Will it make any difference, Sharon?
Thank you very much, Miriam. I think for starters, it's good that he actually apologized. But then on the other hand, you know, they say it is actually useless to cry over spilled milk because this has happened. And I am sure for me, from where I sit, this is quite a well orchestrated plan because, I mean, it's been over 24 hours since that incident happened. And right now to hear that he's actually apologized, whether today or yesterday, means that he might have been quite under pressure to either, you know, protect his his image and his brand as a political leader. And that is something that we are trying to call out. And for me, I believe that, like I said earlier, that politics are emotive. And this is going to really, this is going to really speak so much volume, especially when it comes to, this year's election poll, because, the internet, and we've talked about how much power the internet has, and how much leaders and people need to be very careful about the words that they speak, because we live in a place where we say in the business of news, facts are the currency. So you need to really weigh your words before you let them out in the public. Now he might have apologized, but as they say, history will always leave a shadow. Years later, people will always call him, and people will always hold him accountable to the words that he put in place. So he might have apologized, but I think for starters, it might not really go along, especially when it comes to, his political ambitions, even in future. Thank you.
All right, and we shall leave that matter there for right now. And on page 5 on the Standard newspaper, investigations into the procurement of various COVID-19 items by the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, have revealed a number of irregularities in the procurement process. The Public Procurement Regulations Authority, PPRA, and on July 23rd, 2020, received instructions from the Senate to conduct investigations into the procurement malpractices at KEMSA. The Senate Committee on Health is issuing the directive. In issuing the directive, noted that it had learned of various allegations of procurement irregularities at KEMSA for financial years 2017-2018 to 2019-2020, which cost the firm about 7.8 billion Kenya shillings. Now, the committee also took note of the concerns raised by counties and health workers union regarding the quality and cost of goods supplied by KEMSA in relation to COVID-19 pandemic response, particularly personal protective gear. And the story, I'll just keep a few of the lines. And suspended KEMSA chief executive, Jonah Manchari, was also faulted for issuing commitment letters without professional opinions from the head of the procurement function. And the decision by Dr. Jonah Manchari Mwangi, the CEO, to issue commitment letters based on the letters referred to herein without professional opinion from the head of procurement function was in violation of section 83, subsection 3 of PPDA 2015, raised the report. So the report is out, and I think this is something that is of public interest that we've been waiting to hear what really the findings will be. And so from this story, the former KEMSA CEO, Mr. Manchari, seems to have been found to have flaunted some of these procurement rules, of course, among other things. Are we likely to see a further probe that can lead to prosecution, or this is just one of those reports that will be made public, and before you know it, perhaps Manjari will be appointed to chair some parastatal somewhere? What are we likely to see, Daniel?
Thank you so much, Miriam Mokutu. And of course, with the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta, we have seen a very, very drastic changes when it comes to fight against corruption, especially in his second term. I remember his inaugural words when he started his second term was that he's going to fight corruption, and he's not going to care whether you are his friend, family, or maybe an acquaintance. And that is what we've been seeing. And the height of that particular pronouncement, we saw the Kamata Friday coming into reality, and people getting arrested with Subaru Outbacks on Fridays and renting court on Mondays. But as it is, Miriam, we still have the greatest impediment to justice, which is unfortunately our courts, because whenever the DCI, which has done a commendable job in investigating these corruption cases, take these culprits to court, you realize that no sooner had the court process begun than you hear that these people have been acquitted by the court, or maybe given a lesser judgment, which is not equal to whatever amount of money that they have defrauded the public and the Republic of Kenya. So you realize that we have a lot of corruption in the judiciary. Just maybe to mention a matter, you saw the video clips that Mike Sonko, the former Nairobi governor was sharing about some judicial officers actually begging for bribes from elected leaders for them to be able to collapse some of the cases. You know, that is just a tip of the iceberg. But I believe our judiciary is actually rotten to the core, and it starts from the top all the way to the bottom, to the sweepers in the courts. So we have a very rotten judiciary. And in as much as the war on corruption is being fought by other agencies like the DCI and the DPP, we still have the judiciary to make a judgment on those cases, and which is actually the ultimate end to that particular journey. And if the judiciary is still corrupt, giving out outrageous court rulings in acquitting those involved in corruption, then we still have a long way to go, Miriam. So to me, I believe the DCI has done a very good job. All the investigative agencies, including EACC, and our police officers have done a very good job in unearthing that kind of facts about that particular case. But now the ball remains in the court of our judiciary. Not unless the judiciary is actually overhauled and all those corrupt judges like Justice Mrima, Justice, this other man who comes from my village is gotten rid of, then we will still have those guys bribing their ways to freedom. And before you know it, Jonah Manjari will be vying for a constituency or maybe senatorial or gubernatorial seat somewhere else. And of course, the Kenyan politics that Ruto has brought into our country is that whoever gives money the most is the one who gets elected. And these monies that has been gotten from the KEMSA floor deals will be given out in mass, and before you know it, he'll be into parliament or he'll be into the county as a governor or a senator. So to me, I think we still have to fix our judiciary before we can be a bit optimistic about having such cases being a win for the people of Kenya. Because soon enough, you'll hear about a court maybe halting investigation into the matter, or a court giving him a reprieve, or maybe perhaps once he's arrested, you hear a court has given him a bond. And this is all due to corrupt individuals who are at the core of our judiciary, which is actually has been hijacked by the foreign power, the foreign money of George Soros and other civil society foundations. I submit.
All right, very well. But just to clear something up, this report was done, the investigations was done by the Public Procurement and Regulatory Authority, PPRA, and it received instructions from the Senate Committee on Health to carry out this investigation, especially on the procurement process that led to the country losing this much money. And now the report, of course, notes that Manjari violated Section 104, subsection A of the PPADA 2015 in issuing commitment letters instead of tender documents in response to the letters of intent from bidders. So if you know how the public sector works in terms of tender processes, it's quite a lengthy process, and in every step of the way there should be some level of documentation and all these things that comes with providing verifiable documents and all that, and negotiated prices and all that, and that particular procurement flaunted all this. And so this, as I said, was an investigation that was carried out by the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. So I'll be likely to see now bodies like EACC and DC and others come in and take over this investigation so that we can see an eventual prosecution of the people who have been involved, Sharon, or it's just one of those reports that will sit somewhere in a shelf gathering dust until we wait for another report?
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that question. And of course, I agree with what Daniel has actually, alluded to previously about, our current judiciary and the executive. And first of all, maybe I'd love to pay homage to the president, for the kind of transformation that we've seen at KEMSA, even, by the bringing on board, the new Director General of the NYS military. And of course, with a bid to transform transform a KEMSA and make it quite a medical, quite an effective medical agency, given that we have seen the kind of transformations that have come with people with with any military background. You talk about their fierce training and the command structure that they have. So for them, I believe this is was actually one step into the right direction. And when we hear such reports coming in at this time, means that even the suspension that was given to the KEMSA, top people that were in the helm of the leadership was quite timely, and it actually gave a pave way into some quite substantive investigations. And just like Daniel has talked about, there's quite a deficit of communication when it comes to the executive and the judiciary, and what we have been hearing more often is the empty rhetorics instead of walking into an arena of action. And I also think, apart from the judiciary, maybe the constitution at some point could also be faulty, and it needs some amendment, because there's a notion that says that you are innocent until you're proven guilty, and this has continued to delay so much justice. And as they say, a justice delayed is justice denied. So if probably we could amend into some of these articles of the constitution and see how we could actually fasten the process to bring more culprits into book, because there are so many leaders and who are actually even vying for top seats, including even my governor back in Tharaka Nithi County, with so many cases of graft and corruption, but simply because there has not been quite what you can call a substantial evidence, they are still holding offices, and they are not even fit to hold offices. So also our constitution, at the same time, there's a need to tighten the systems of recovery and accountability, because that is the only way corruption is going to stop fighting back. If maybe someone is charged with of a graft or a corruption case of like millions of money, and then you're given a lenient amount of money that it is just something that it's just a pocket change to you. We are not going to move in any direction. And then on the other hand, this whole KEMSA scandal, I feel like it's high time when this whole thing is brought to book. I don't know why I tend to see these kind of people that look public offers, especially in the health sector. I would not be wrong to call them, a murderer, because you have denied healthcare to someone, and which was quite pivotal. And what if how many people have died as a result of all these kind of scandals? So it's high time this matter is actually brought to book, and given that there is evidence, it is only going to be of good to even the people of Kenya. Remember, the president had actually given an ultimatum of some days, and we are talking about years. So there has been so many questions about how that that whole scenario panned out. So it's only going to be of good even to restore the public confidence that has been eroded when this matter is actually brought to an end, and we have people actually being held accountable, and let justice actually take its full course. Thank you.
Okay, and we will be here following that story because I think a lot of Kenyans would like to see how this case, are waiting to see how this KEMSA scandal will end, and if at all, if the people find culpable, will answer will be held accountable, all right? And so another story still on page 5 on the Standard newspaper, this time on education, and the government has issued fresh orders to school heads to be liberal and allow students to go home whenever they seek permission and only return when they are ready. Basic Education Principal Secretary P.S. Julius Juan said school heads should desist from restraining learners who want to go home as long as the process is done properly. This, he noted, will end unrest in schools, and he was speaking at Nyambaria Boys and Sironga Girls in Nyamira County yesterday. The PS warned principals against disobeying the government directive to allow students to go home. So, I don't know, I'm confused, Daniel. So now the PS is saying if a child has shown they're disgruntled and they want to go home, they should be allowed to go home. We seems to be changing these rules as we knew them to be. What's really going on in our education sector?
Yes, thank you so much, Miriam Ogutu. And of course, the crisis in the education sector need to be not to be managed, but it need to be solved. You know, if you're managing it, it means it's just short term. There is no sustainability in dealing with it. But if you are going to solve it, then it means the solutions that we're going to bring on the table are going to be long lasting. And I believe that is one of the solutions to these school unrests, amongst also other solutions like having drug tests to these students. So maybe just to use my own experience, the school I went to, I remember you could go and ask permission to go home at any particular given time, and it will be granted. And just to make it clear, this permission was not granted by the school teacher or maybe the housemaster or maybe one of the administration members, but it was granted by the house captains of the house. These are the school prefects. These are the people you talk to on a daily basis. So that is how it was. And we had very even minimal cases where students will sneak out of school. And also another thing, the school allowed parents to visit their students whenever they could during their free time, maybe during games time or Sundays, or whichever time when we had competitions in the school. So it was a free way. The gates were always open for the parents to come see their students. The students will also be granted permission to go home whenever they will raise a concern that was worth going home for. So you realize that this mentality that a school was some kind of a confined prison, where when you get in there, there is very limited chances that you will go home, were not maybe something amongst us. And that really helped in ensuring that we had discipline in the school. It ensured that we had very few cases, maybe perhaps, where students will sneak out. And therefore, if a student felt that maybe they had some pent-up pressure that they wanted to go home and release, or maybe they were facing psychological challenges, which maybe teachers will not solve, and they wanted to go home and talk to their parents or maybe to their kin, then they will actually do so freely. So I believe that is something that they should actually look at. And that is why perhaps we have very few cases of school fires in day schools and in boarding schools. So if we do away with those red tapes that have been actually putting our students in some kind of a prison in the school or a military barracks, then I believe the pressure that these students are feeling will actually be able to subside, and we'll have few school fires happening in our schools. Miriam, it is a common knowledge that if today in the line of your work, you are actually facing a lot of pressure, you would want to go for a vacation and just relax, maybe in Dianin Valley or maybe somewhere in Paris, and just have yourself breathing some air of freedom. And when you come back, I believe your productivity will have improved. That is the same thing with learners. So I believe if we give them that leeway to go home at times and just free up and ventilate, I believe it will give them the re-energization that they need to come back and continue with their journey of learning. So to me, I think it's a very, very great proposition, and it should be taken into consideration by the school principals so that we are able to work and be able to relieve the country of this menace that is happening right now, of schools being touched by learners. So if you can work on that, I believe with all stakeholders consulted, it will be a great idea for our learners. I support it, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Sharon, from what we hear, the PS of education saying that these children should be given permission whenever they seek it and only return when they are ready. I mean, it's like they're setting up the students against the schools, don't you think?
Miriam, I think I have mixed reactions about this whole, directive. I don't know why I feel like there is a bone of contention between different education stakeholders, from the education CS down to the PS and now down to the principals and, majorly the board of directors in schools. And I feel like in this case, well, if the concern is genuine, then fine, they're actually bound to go. But how do they also, identify in genuine cases? Because someone could actually forge a letter because, and even just go out if they actually have bad intentions to go and maybe even bring carry in or sneak in these manner of these tools that actually, orchestrate to the rise of arson in school. That's my personal thinking. I don't know how well they're actually going to be able to identify in genuine cases of people that have actually forged their documents, especially medical documents, because it is evident that, with this day and era, anything is, likely to happen. And for me, I am not really for this idea, but rather for other modes of like bringing back, the music festivals and the likes of guidance and counseling and the likes of, school trips. Those are trips for them if they feel like maybe the academic year is so tight and they need some relief. Probably it's high time they reintroduce the likes of even what used to call, I can't remember what used to call, where you go to other schools to, check out how they're doing, and sports activities, music festivals, and other things that could actually relieve them other than, just going because if you actually allow them to go home, you're not going to be able to identify an ingenuine case of someone who was actually forged a letter. So for this kind of a directive, I think I have some mixed reactions to it.
All right, thank you so much. And that reminds me of a time when I attended, my son's, we had a parents' meeting there, and the teachers were raising a few issues, not so much to do with indiscipline, but they were trying to, one of the teachers who was speaking said, long time, perhaps the homes are not very comfortable, so a lot of kids were just better off staying in schools, in boarding schools. But right now, the homes have become very comfortable that, the kids prefer to stay at home. And I remember last week I returned my son back to school and he was like, Mom, can I just take another extra day, another 2 days? I was like, for what? Go to school, mid-term you'll come back, closing day you'll come back, but for right now you need to go and get some education. I don't know, maybe I'm just old-fashioned like that, but directive like this, I think, leave even the school managements at a very tight spot, because if you insist that the schools should give permission to the students wherever they seek for it, and only for them to return when they're ready, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying, and at this point, I think the schools are not left with much choice. Daniel, would you like to perhaps add on to something before we move on to another topic?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And of course, we have to move away from the African perspective and our culture in terms of raising our kids. You realize that in developed world, children, we start teaching children language at even an early age of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. But you realize that in Africa, parents will want to dictate whatever their kids do. They want to tell them to behave in a certain manner. They want them to go in this particular school because they went in such a school. They want to actually go in some kind of hardship because they went through hardship. And I remember reading some book where they said that if you think that your children should go through hardship simply because you studied in hardship, then it means you never healed in whatever hardship that you went through. So as a parent, I believe you should give your children a choice to make for the kind of life they want to live, so long as you do not derail from maybe standing up to the moral upbringing of the kids. But that is what happens in the developing world. If Dr. Masanga would have been on the panel, perhaps he would have told you that maybe in the UK, children are raised and they're given the opportunity to decide what they want to do in the future. Let's say someone wants to be a musician. The parents actually respect that. They do not impose on them these other careers and tell them, no, you don't have to be a musician. You'll be a lawyer, or maybe you'll be an engineer. And therefore, they grow up knowing that they want to be a musician or maybe a football player. When they reach a certain age, they'll be taken to a music school instead of going to study maybe at the London School of Economics, or maybe they'll be taken to a football academy, and to be able, this is to allow them to be able to nurture their skill and all that. But in the African perspective, if you do not toe the line being given by your parents or your teachers, sometimes even they deploy violence. so that you are able to stick on that particular dream. And I think that is what is derailing our kids in terms of even just being able to sustain their education in those schools. It is like a military camp, you know. You come late to class before even the teacher knows the reason why you came late. They're actually working on you, caning you thoroughly. So you realize that we actually raise timid kids who cannot be able to express themselves even before people. Kids who grow up to become people, very violent people at the places of work, and sometimes they do not know how to communicate well. And there's a very, very stark difference, Miriam, when you bring a kid who is studying in an international school, what we call the GCSE system, and a kid who is starting, who is actually going through our Kenyan system. You realize that with these kids who are studying the international system, they're actually outspoken, you know. They can actually go in a place, in a public place, and be able to speak out and represent themselves, introduce themselves, talk about a myriad of things. Unlike our kids who go to these public primary schools, who when even you visit their homes and you ask them where they school or maybe what they would want to do when they grow up, they're actually shy, you know. They don't want to talk because they might talk, and then after the visitor leaves, the parent will actually be hitting them and telling them you're not supposed to do this and that, just simply because as a parent you never gave them the freedom to express themselves, so that also when they express themselves, wherever thing they say that is bad, you tell them no, this is not what you're supposed to talk to tell visitors and strangers. This is the way you're supposed to talk to them. That freedom lacks in the African setting and even in our system of education. So therefore, when you hear the ministry say that children should be given a leeway to go home and relax until they are ready to come back to school, I think it is something good, because as a kid maybe who is undergoing depression or maybe any health mental illness, they really want to maybe have therapy until a level where they feel, when I go to school now, I can learn when my heart is peaceful, my mind is settled, and therefore I can comprehend whatever the chemistry teacher is teaching or biology teacher is teaching. And therefore also that goes to parents. If a kid comes home, ask this child, why have you come home? What is the problem? Should there be any concern maybe that you want me to hear, or maybe me to talk about or advise you about? So it's just not a matter of a child going home and maybe being idle, lazing around and indulging in these useless groups that are in the hood. So it is upon the parents also to be serious and step up on their parenthood and all that. So I believe it's a good proposition, Miriam, bottom line, because we need to have kids who are free. And that means that parents also have to come in, so that these kids do not take it as an opportunity to be what we used to call to maybe see in primary school, this truancy, where kids just run away from learning and spend endless times at home without doing anything. So I believe if they can actually be able to link up with the parents and know the kids who actually need that, I believe it will be a great thing to relieve the stress that is there in our learners and be able to reduce the burning that are happening in the schools. I submit.
Okay, thank you.
Miriam, if you give me some seconds to actually, to respond to Daniel Wesonga, I totally disagree, because I am a parent, and when you talk about Africa and culture, I will tend to disagree because we are living in the era of, we are, where we are actually globally, we are a global world. And I think internet is a double-edged sword, given that the same internet that actually connects us is the same internet that is going to control us. So we do not have a full control of what is actually consumed on a daily basis, especially with our children. And we cannot shelve away some things, to tame morality, and whereby we actually want to produce all-rounded students. I think some of these African setups have to take place, and the only way to enhance creation and innovation is what the Ministry of Education has brought about. That is the CBC. So the best we can do is to embrace it, and maybe with time we are going to get to the devolved and the developed countries. But when you talk about freedom and infringement of human rights, I don't think we need to let the children have it all by I mean, when we went to school, we used to have the symposiums and the drama festivals that made it fun when we were in school, and not allowing students to just go and because someone is having a headache, so they can just go home and have fun. I think we need to strike a balance and play a level playing field when it comes to how we want to raise the children in this kind of a generation, in this TikTok generation and era. We cannot just let them have their way or the highway. There needs to be a balance, maybe by introducing some of the things that were actually taken away and made maybe the current curriculum quite difficult, and I talked about symposiums, the music festivals, and so many other things that
that was never taken away. It's only that I think it was put on hold fast because of COVID-19. Otherwise, these are activities that are there that continue in the schools. So, but because of COVID-19,
Yeah, but in some of the schools, like my little sister, some of them were actually abolished because of the tight curriculum and everything. So if they're actually brought back, maybe it is going to calm down the kind of pressure that these students have.
Because of curriculum, I didn't know in high school things have changed that much.
yeah, quite, especially in public schools, so much has actually changed. Life is not like it used to be. Yeah. So Daniel, I don't agree with that.
Maybe if I'll just come in. I didn't mean to say that perhaps teachers should relent in doing the due diligence to determine who deserves to go home. And that is why I said it will not be a loophole where those who fancy playing truancy should be taken to go home and just hang out there, wasting time and not doing anything. It should be a system that actually is fully regulated by the teacher and both with the parent. And that is why there should be a working relationship between a teacher and the parent. Miriam, today, if someone gave you maybe offer to be giving you maybe 10 million for the purpose of one of your kids in terms of education, and told you to choose between taking your kid to maybe St. Andrew's Turi and maybe taking them to friend's school Kamsinga, I believe you'll go for Turi. And why? It is because Turi offers some kind of education, where these kids might as well maybe transit from high school and go all the way to Ivy League University like Harvard and all that. It is the same decision I'll make. Let's say, for example, I have friends who have maybe kids in a Nairobi Academy, and they'll tell you in Nairobi Academy, especially for the kindergarten kids, it's not just about learning and doing maybe all the normal things kids do. These kids are taught about values. They're taught about life lessons. They're taught about even swimming, playing music, and all those kind of things that interest the kids. But if you go to my village today and you get a nursery kid maybe going to school, they'll narrate to you how maybe they hate a certain teacher simply because as early as the age of 4 or 5 years in a village school, you're already being caned, you're already being woken up at 5 to go to school. Go to these estates in Nairobi, Miriam, and you'll find that at 5 a.m. in the morning, we still have primary school, lower primary school kids going to school as early as 5. They are woken up. That is not something that we should be doing with our curriculum. Whereas when you go to schools like Hillcrest, we have different time frames for lower kindergarten, we have for upper primary, and all the way to senior schools. So to me, I think as parents, sometimes we do not have to pass our kids through these kind of hardships. And I was reading some book last year around October, which was saying that most of these people you see in life who commit crimes, maybe as serial killers, or maybe just a family person wakes up one day and kills the wife and kids and all that. These are people who are abused in their childhood, and it doesn't matter. Sometimes as a parent, you could be abusing your kid and you do not know by subjecting them to some things that they do not like, but because you have put them under so much pressure, they do not speak out. Sometimes as teachers, even in boarding schools, you might be abusing your kids, the children you are teaching, but you do not know, because these kids do not have the right to expression because of the very pent up, tight, pressured kind of environment that has been put up by those in that environment. So they grow up with this hurt in their heart. So that when they become mature individuals, they're actually deficient in some areas. They do not have good working relationship with their colleagues. They do not have a good working relationship with their family. They do not have even good marriages, you know. So because they were actually abused in some way. And I remember when I was in high school, our chaplain gave us a story here in Kenya where he had been told to go and be able to arbitrate between father and two sons. This father was an evangelist who was in the US. He could send money back to Kenya. The kids were studying in the best boarding schools in this country. And after 20 years doing evangelism in the US, when he came back, actually the sons refused him. And that is why the chaplain was called to actually arbitrate between the father and the sons. And the reason why they refused the father, despite providing for the education and everything, is because they said, you have never been with us. You have been an absentee father. For 20 years, we've not known a father, you know. So such kind of things, you might take them lightly, but they actually mean a lot. Like that time I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling him it is actually wrong for parents who take maybe from their kids to boarding school, who are from standard 2. We have people who are taking kids to boarding school in standard 2. I studied in a primary school where we had boarding school students in standard 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are still young kids. They still need this parental love. They still need to mingle with their parents and play in the hood with the fellow kids. So we do not have to subject them. But if you go out there, you'll find a Kenyan who says it is actually good to take a kid to boarding school at an early age. So to me, right, Miriam, I disagree with that. And I believe these propositions, these kids to be going home at a periodical time to actually just relieve their stress and also be able to breathe this air, good air at home, and eat some good food. It's just to work in their benefit and the benefit of their parents. I submit.
But I think if CBC, just Daniel.
Sharon.
Yes.
Yeah, because I need to move from this subject. But this TikTok, this good air, that's what they want to come back home to do.
Yeah, thank you. and Miriam, Daniel talked about students at Hillcrest and everything. I think that is what CBC is actually meant to offer to some extent, actually make learning fun. Yeah. So it's just a matter of putting the right structural reforms and preliminaries to CBC and embrace the idea, and probably it's going to make learning fun. But let's not walk away from the African setup of how we went to school by asking
Miriam, maybe just the last point for me. When as a parent, if you say that kid is not coming home simply because they are going to be in TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, then you have failed as a parent. Because
as a parent,
let me say, if your kid has an access to a phone or a laptop or any other device, it means as a parent, you might have provided that device to the kid. And that is why we are failing sometimes as adults. Because I remember when I used to be in high school, and I told you my high school, you could go home whenever you wanted, so long as you go, give a reason, and you're out. Those days, I would be sent to the Kenya National Library at Upper Hill. You spend the day there up to 2 p.m. and then you are allowed the rest of your day to go do your things and relax. That is how we used to do our days. I do have some kids in where I stay, and they will tell you over the weekend, whatever they do is not spending time with their devices. They go for music classes, they go to play football at Ligindogo. Some of them even go to learn how to code with computer. And some of these things are not quite expensive.
But these are during the school holidays and perhaps the midterms. But these kids who just want to be out of school when the rest are in school, I think that is where we are having a problem. And by the PSA, if somebody wants to go home, and there's a point you brought in earlier, Daniel, which I agree with you. Perhaps this student is going through some mental issues, then they should be allowed to stay at home until they're ready to come back to school. I agree up to that end. But a lot of these kids, especially these high school children, they're at an age where they're very mischievous. They're at an age where they think they're grown and they're not. They feel they know what's right for them. And really, they're still developing. All right. So we still have a responsibility as adults, as parents, as teachers, to still guide them through life. And a lot of times, maybe it's how we choose to guide them that maybe it's not very effective, but still they need a lot of guidance. So I think this is a conversation that will not end, but I do agree with a lot of the things that you guys have said, but still I think I've just realized I'm a very old-fashioned person, and I feel very Daniel. And during holidays, I also do take my son to do those things. He loves taekwondo, he loves swimming, he loves all that stuff. He does that, and he'll still cook and clean and do all that stuff for me back here at home. So we're good. Yeah. Now, if it's time to be in school, just go to school. Unless
Miriam, I agree with you, and I don't think you're an old-fashioned parent, but that is how.
Just a single question to finalize my input in this. Let's ask ourselves, how many boarding schools are there in Britain? How many boarding schools are there in the UK? Tell me that, and tell me how many.
They're way far ahead.
We're in Kenya. I mean, Daniel, get back to the reality. We're in Kenya, and one of the biggest.
Easy boarding supper, Daniel Lakini.
Exactly.
All right, we have to move on from this. Yeah. And I think, right now we're having a conversation, I think even in the Ministry of Education, where they're trying to, I don't know, maybe within time we'll start reducing the number of boarding schools we have in the country. I don't know. But I think these solutions that they keep coming up with, they're just skating around the issues. I don't think anybody is actually dealing with the issues that have plagued our education sector, especially the high school and the level of indiscipline that we've seen in the recent past. So until they sit down and actually confront the actual problem, watakuwa wanakuja tu with these solutions that might be effective for some time, but they don't really address the core issue in this. So I think this is a conversation that we might not end right now. So right now, I think I'll just have a rundown on some African news very quickly, and then you'll choose whichever you want to talk about. And I'm reading from the Daily Nation. Page 21, and we'll start with Nigeria, where gunmen in Nigeria killed at least 200 people in multiple raids this week in northwest Zamfara state. A government spokeswoman told AFP on Sunday. Clashes between herders and farmers over access to land has plagued northwest and central Nigeria for years, with some groups evolving into criminal gangs known as bandits who kill, loot, and kidnap. This is horrific and tragic. Over 200 persons were buried due to the invasion by bandits. That is according to spokeswoman of Sadia Omar Farouk, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, who said that. Now on Saturday, 4 residents had told AFP that gunmen rampaged through Anka and Bokuyum districts over 2 days, killing at least 140 people. And Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari condemned the attacks, describing them as an act of desperation by mass murderers. Okay. And then we move on to South Africa, where South Africa's ruling ANC marked 110th anniversary on Saturday in low-key fashion as the country reels from the devastating fire in parliament, last year's deadly riots, and emerging details of corruption. In the stands of a podium in Polokwane in northern Limpopo province, a few hundred party members sporting the African National Congress signature, yellow, green, and black dotted the terraces. It was a far cry from the noisy and large crowds of supporters traditionally burst in for the annual festivities, thanks to COVID-19 restrictions limiting outdoor gatherings to just 2,000 people, and the speech from President Cyril Ramaphosa in which he referred to acts that had the effect of subverting our constitutional democracy further dampened the party atmosphere. So in a nutshell, ANC marked 110 years of existence, and we know that ANC has been in power since their first president, that is Black president, that is Nelson Mandela. And I think it has been in power now for maybe 27 years this year, if I'm not very wrong. And then we move on to We move on to Tunisia, and a total of 19 political personalities were referred to the Correctional Chamber of the Tunis Court of First Instance for electoral crimes. The list includes Rached Ghannouchi, president of Tunisia's Ennahda Party, and others, and from ex-president of Tunisia from 2011 and 2014, Youssef Chahed, and former prime minister from 2016 to 2020. So the politicians were charged over some poll crimes, like we see what is happening here in Kenya. All right, and then we move on to Dar es Salaam, where 5 people, including 4 children, have been killed by lightning that strike in Tanzania western districts of Kibondo in Kigoma region, police said on Wednesday. And then in Uganda, the country has allowed middle-aged savers who are struggling during the COVID-19 pandemic to access their social security savings. A member who is 45 years of age and above who has made contributions to the fund for at least 10 years is eligible to mid-term access to his or her benefits of a sum not exceeding 20%, I think, of their savings. And then we end with Mali, where West African leaders gathered to discuss Mali's political crisis, with the military junta submitting a new time frame for a transition back to civilian rule at the last minute after its first proposal was rejected. The extraordinary summit of the Economic Community of West African State Bloc in Ghana's capital, Accra, is expected to discuss possible sanctions on the Sahel state. And I think those sanctions, was Mali already sanctioned? I think I was watching Al Jazeera. I'm not sure, but it appears. And then, as we know, AFCON. Let me just bring us that AFCON happened yesterday, the Africa Cup of Nations, and the Africa Cup of Nations got underway yesterday night. It should be a showcase of talent and exciting football, with some of the world's top players taking part. And of course, we saw Cameroon there take on Burkina Faso. And before that, Daniel, so I've been meaning to have this conversation before you guys speak on the rest of the stories I've read out and speak on whichever you feel you want. But on this AFCON story, yesterday I was watching Al Jazeera during the day before AFCON was underway later on in the evening. And, players have to go through COVID-19, test before they play. And the key 5 Burkina Faso players were found to have COVID-19, and the coach from Burkina Faso really had a lot of issues and said they did not trust that the tests were actually okay. And remember, it was done by Cameroon, and Cameroon, as the host country, had to be in the first match there. So, and they were playing Burkina Faso. So Burkina Faso felt as though there was a foul play. Do you think that could be the case? But it's Cameroon, so I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm not saying that's really what happened. But I found it to be very interesting. They're saying Cameroon could be sabotaging them because their 5 key players are tested positive for COVID just a few hours before the game.
Yes, Miriam Ogutu, and I happened to watch that game yesterday, and of course you could see from the inception that the game was actually lopsided, and everything was actually favoring the host, that is Cameroon. But one thing for you to note is that Cameroon is a country which for more than 30 years has been ruled by a vicious dictator by the name Paul Biya. And those are the kind of thorax and cheeky tactics that he has been using to hold even onto power. So whatever has been happening in politics in Cameroon, unfortunately, is also being brought into football. And it's so unfortunate that the organizers of these AFCON competitions settled on Cameroon, a country which has the slightest, which does not have the slightest regard to human rights, a country where people of Ambazonia are still languishing in poverty, discrimination, and their sons and daughters are being butchered in cold blood by the regime of President Paul Biya. So in as much as we view football as a game which is actually supposed to preserve and promote peace and human rights, then Cameroon was the worst decision to be settled on as a country to host this AFCON competition. And you saw how even the game itself was actually biased in that Cameroon won on the basis of being given 2 penalties. Otherwise, Burkina Faso would have beaten Cameroon to the pulp. And anyone who watched the match saw how much besieged the Cameroon players were in the field. So to me, I think that was a rigged match. It was a fixed match, so to say, in that Cameroon was to win by all means, by thorax, by come rain, come sunshine. And that is how even Paul Biya wins his elections. There's no elections in Cameroon. Cameroon is ruled by a dictator who wins by 98% of the votes cast. And therefore, this thing has gotten into his head. And being the fact that he's actually also old in age, I believe sometimes it gets into a level where they get senile. We saw that with something that you can compare with Papua New Guinea, not Papua New Guinea, but Equatorial Guinea, where the current president's uncle, that was Nguema, was actually getting to that particular level to an extent that he even gotten the money of the country to his village and was dishing out from his briefcase in a hut built in his village. So I think also Paul Biya is heading to that level, and that is why you see even football that was being played yesterday was being run like an election in Cameroon. So to me, I think Cameroon did not deserve the win yesterday. And Mali was being, not Mali, but Burkina Faso was being sabotaged by those officials. And we cannot trust the results that were given in terms of the COVID tests. I believe it was a strategy that failed when the Burkina Faso side refused the results. And therefore, they had to be sabotaged further by being, by awarding Cameroon the 2 penalties. Otherwise, I believe this AFCON competition will not have been taken to Cameroon. I submit.
Okay, well, obviously I did not watch the match. I didn't even know they won through penalties, but I'll make a point of perhaps watching today's match. That will be between Morocco and Ghana. That will be played at Stade Amadou Ahidjo today. But Sharon, do you think Burkina Faso had a point? And I would have want to believe that perhaps Cameroon being the host country and owing to whatever it is that is going on in there, perhaps the AFCON should have sought for outside medical team that would carry out these tests for the sake of not blaming anybody outside, even from the continent. You know, bring in the medical officials and let them carry out this independent COVID-19 test, and then I think everybody will be happy. Maybe there will be no cases of feeling as if the rest will be compromised. But is Burkina Faso right to feel the way they were feeling? Sharon.
Miriam, thank you so much for that question. And as much as I'm not a fan of football, probably I would have 3 or so points to add on to these. And now when you talk about, I remember last week when you talked about
somebody's not a football fan. Go ahead.
Yes. That's why I said I would not lack, a few pointers to bring about how this whole, situation has been carried out. And I remember last week when we were having, this quite a heated debate about why, this AFCON had actually, why it had to, be held in Cameroon, given that Cameroon is even a failed, it is a failed state in itself. I mean, even when you talk about the upsurge of security there, that is already in itself a puzzle that raised quite some eyebrows. And just trying to see what if probably this AFCON to some extent was actually held here in Kenya, because we are an island of peace, and we understand that we are actually a beacon of security. And I know, we were actually banned because of the kind of, the state of our stadiums. And I was just wondering, probably if the deputy president had, heeded to the state of arts of the stadiums that he had promised, maybe this could have been a different case. But anyway, that aside, talk about the issue of COVID, not even the issue of security, but COVID is something that is quite pivotal. And I am sure if the administration of Cameroon, in their own wisdom, they ought to have, sought out for, quite some punitive measures and stringent measures, including what we had actually proposed here in Kenya, to have the likes of document verifiers, because COVID, has shown us, the most, and we are actually at the peak of COVID. So I think this is an issue with leadership and, a failure to plan, because this is something that they really knew, that we are not out of the woods yet. And the best they would have done is not to have dropped the guards, but to actually, increased, quite some stringent measures, including most of the measures that we've talked about here. And even like you've mentioned, outsource some, quite some competent medical team so that they don't endanger the lives of the people. It would be so unfortunate for someone who is, innocent in this case, and to live in a foreign country when you have COVID-19. I mean, it's not funny. So this actually begs down to the kind of leadership and the administration of Cameroon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And Sharon, before I let you go, I read some African news. There are some from a few countries across. I don't know if you'd like to comment in any of that before Daniel ends the show for us.
Yes, sure. I'll talk about Nigeria and South Africa, and this whole issue about Nigeria. By now, it is clear that this is a collapsing state, and the more we continue, we continue sitting down to watch without so much action actually being taken in place, the more we will continue reaping the negative effects. And, the dangers of diversity and ethnic balkanization have caused so much friction and cannot be dismissed at any point, because these are matters that really needs to be relooked into. And the same sentiments that were shared even here in Kenya by the Senator Linturi, that all, we need to put down the issues about, diversity and ethnic balkanization if we want to move forward as an Africa and as a country. And I've always been for the idea that Dr. Matsanga had proposed here before about, rearranging Nigeria, just like what the Ugandan President Museveni actually went ahead to do to Congo, so that, we do not have, we can bring all these matters into closure, because at the end of the day, we all want a united Nigeria and a united Africa. And the best we can do is to continue standing up without any conditions whatsoever, not give parasitic relationships or parasitic aids, but give symbiotic aid so that we can move forward. Because if anything happens in Nigeria, I've always said the negative effects are going to spill over, the entire Horn of Africa. So it's still time for different, even Pan-Africanists, and that is what Dr. Matsanga and the likes of Professor Lumumba have always been at the forefront, trying to, speak up so that we can see change and bring these kind of stalemates to a closure. Yeah. So then you talked about the issue about South Africa, and maybe I would like to congratulate them for having attained 110 years. Their anniversary amidst the kind of divisions and challenges that have been there, and how the kind of leaders have been able to hold this together. It should be something that maybe here in Kenya, our political parties should, borrow a leaf from. How I don't understand how a ruling party will take, for 110 years. Here we have political vehicles each and every electioneering period. We have new parties. Yeah, UDA, ODM now, you cannot even exhaust them. So probably that is something that our Kenyan political parties need to take up. And of course, with the kind of with the political amendment bill that is actually taking place, I am hoping it's going to ascend into a law so that we are able to strengthen, the loyalty and the kind of political vehicles that we have in every electioneering period. So for me, this is quite a challenge. Anyone will talk about the kind of divisions and the kind of challenges that they've had. But all in all, I think there's something to celebrate about, and there's something to learn even from South Africa, because South Africa is quite a case study when we talk about one of the devolved countries here, and so much that they've been able to achieve. So one thing I would credit the leadership, and I think this is one step into the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And South Africa is not really devolved. It's not a federal state, but it is, they vote through what we call proportional representation. It's a parliament. Anyway, another story, but thank you so much.
Yeah, but that is what the BBI here was meant to solve, about the representation and the equity And I mean, yeah, I say there's something to learn. I think there's something to learn, Miriam. I think for me, there's something to learn from South Africa. And especially how they've been able to handle the COVID-19, the whole pandemic. I think I have some few things to learn.
It's leading in the continent in terms of infections and all that. South Africa, but yes, I think they've done their best.
But they're one of the most advanced countries here in Africa, Miriam. Let's agree that.
Yeah, it's arguable, but
not in
I agree with a lot of things you've said. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Miriam Mogutu. And of course, Sharon has really exhausted the field in that she has talked more about whatever is happening in Africa, in South Africa, and all the other parts of Africa. And my maybe submission will be like what Dr. Matsanga has always said here, and many other Pan-Africanist comrades who have come on this platform. Africa need to reawaken. We need not to be reading only bad news about the African continent. When you go to the West Africa, you realize that it is a war-torn region. When you go to the Sahel, the Maghreb region, the Horn of Africa is actually in turmoil and all that. We need some positive news. And of course, when you talk about countries like Nigeria, where my sister Sharon has talked about, is that yesterday in the region of Zamfara, we had an explosion which claimed 200 lives of Nigerians. And I think that is very, very unfortunate, in as much as President Muhammadu Buhari is exiting office maybe in a few months or maybe so to come. I believe we still have a long way to go. Remember, Nigeria is one of the most populous countries in Africa with a population of almost 200 million people. Nigeria is Africa's second-born country in that it got its independence immediately after Ghana. And therefore, a lot is expected out of Nigeria. But unfortunately, leader after leader, regime after regime in Nigeria has always been a regime that really discriminates the people of Nigeria. It really neglects them, in that Lagos today is a African city with the most generators in the world. It does not have electricity. Most of its infrastructures are actually dilapidated. It's the only city where we do have one of the biggest slums in the city, you know. So to me, I think Africa need to reawaken up. We do not need to have those kind of news in terms of people being killed, in terms of leadership wrangles and all that. Now, going to the positive news that I'm talking about, we need to also congratulate countries like Uganda on the way they're actually taking the seriousness of handling COVID-19 to the next level. And I believe Uganda is one of the African countries which has managed to maintain low COVID numbers. And also another thing to learn about Uganda, in as much as President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni might be perceived as a dictator, or maybe someone who is actually cracking down on the opposition, one thing to learn about Uganda is that since 1986, when they took over power, Uganda has been more peaceful than Nigeria. Uganda has been more peaceful than most of the West African countries. And therefore, that is something which is a plus. You look at countries like Rwanda, Kagame is actually perceived by a number of people as a dictator, being heavy-handed. But Rwanda is doing incredibly well in terms of the economy and in terms of even peace and the unity of the country. So that is something that we might maybe want to take away, to learn from Rwanda. Now, let me go back to South Africa, which Sharon has talked about, that they have been able to be in power, that is the ANC, over 100 years. And that is something which is commendable. And I believe if every African countries had such a strong and maybe very, very flexible laws in terms of parties, forming parties and coalition and all that, I believe we will have tranquility. In South Africa, we've never had a coup d'etat. you realize also Zimbabwe has been in, ZANU-PF has been in power even more than the ANC, I believe. So the newspaper will have captured that, or maybe just for matters of clarity. And you realize that in Zimbabwe, you only have two major parties, that is ZANU-PF and MDC. In South Africa also, we only have two major parties, that is ANC and the Democrat. Miriam tells me there are three. I know of ANC and the is it Democratic or what, something party? Democratic Party. Yeah, so you realize they have fewer parties, and of course they have very, very stable leadership. And when you look at the leaders of South Africa, maybe for viewers who do not know, they were all freedom fighters. When you look at Nelson Mandela, when you look at Thabo Mbeki, when you look at Jacob Zuma, when you look at Cyril Ramaphosa, they were all freedom fighters. And they all had the patience to give Mandela the presidency. After serving for a single term, Mandela gave it to Thabo Mbeki. After serving for his term, Thabo Mbeki gave it to Jacob Zuma. After Jacob Zuma has given to Cyril Ramaphosa. And maybe we have another freedom fighter who is still patiently waiting on the queue and will be able to lead South Africa. But what happens to the other African countries? Thomas Sankara was taken out by his close ally. Mobutu Sese Seko took out Patrice Lumumba. You know, so such kind of values is what Africa need to borrow a leaf from. And even for ZANU-PF, you've seen right now we have Emerson Mnangagwa taking over from Robert Mugabe. I know the next president of Zimbabwe, with that second thought, is going to come from ZANU-PF. So if we have strong political, social structures, I believe we can also be able to reap from those structures very peaceful countries and very, very progressive political journeys for the countries. And I believe even as the Senate sits in Kenya, here in Kenya, to pass the political amendment bill, that is what they'll have in their minds. Because strong countries, strong democracies are built on strong political structures in terms of the parties that rule those particular countries. Look at China, for example, the Communist Party of China. It is a party that goes out there to look out for leaders. If they see Miriam maybe coming from maybe Kisumu or Siaya, and she's a good debater, she's a good leader, she is very competent in her field, they go out there and tell Miriam, we want you to come into our party so that we can be able to appoint you as a Minister of Foreign Affairs. It is not the other way around, where party positions are dished out in terms of loyalty and all that. So I believe in strong party structures. And if Africa could borrow such a positive, maybe matter from South Africa or maybe from Zimbabwe, I believe we will be destined for greatness. Otherwise, Miriam, apart from all the negative news that comes out of our newspaper headlines from Africa, I believe Africa is a great country, is a great continent. And if all our leaders can be able to perpetuate the Pan-African dream and talk about the goodness that is in Africa and be able to sort our leadership wrangles, I believe we can be able to play the League of Europe, the Western powers, and all the other world superpowers that are actually leading the world economic and political scene at the moment. I submit.
Very well, thank you so much for that, Daniel Wasonga. Thank you, Sharon Gitonga. I've really enjoyed the conversation that you've had this morning and the topics that you've had an opportunity to look at. And of course, you've reminded us about that debate, the political parties debate that was ended in Parliament last week, and tomorrow it shall be received in Senate, and perhaps the conversation will start there. So I think that is something that Kenyans also are seeking to see how that will play out there in the Senate. Thank you so much, our viewers, wherever you're watching us from across the continent. My name is Miriam Ogotu. This has been Kenya and Africa at a glance. We'll see you some other time. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye for now.